Answer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Of the morning, Dan Proft. So, somebody caught up with Governor Spalding there, J.B. Pritzker, out in public, and asked him about the MAID legislation he signed into law on Friday. Very quietly. No public bill signing, no celebration. Just the signature late in the afternoon on a Friday, and a statement that was released. Asked to explain himself more fulsomely about his support for euthanasia as the law of the land in the land of Lincoln. Pritzker for this.
It's a very difficult issue, frankly. I heard from a lot of people on both sides of this. I will say I think the vast majority of people seem to have favored giving people who are in pain at the end of their life a choice. And that is what this bill is about. It's about giving people their individual choice. But I also understand that for some people it's part of a religious, moral issue around their faith. And I listen to that because I know how important that is. It's very difficult, but in the end I felt like giving people a choice in these very limited circumstances. We don't want to broaden this and make this something that's broad-based, available to people who just decide on their own. This is something deciding when you're in pain and at the end of your life. I just felt in the end that the stories that I heard, the introspection that I did about what I would think for myself or for my family members, that that helped to guide me to the conclusion.
He's so introspective. What do you mean not broaden it? If choice is a good thing, then why would you limit my choice? How do you know the pain I'm in, Governor? You did this because you believe in choices for end-of-life care. That's what you said. So how dare you limit that option for just some and not others? Right? What's the limiting principle to choice if that's the basis? And of course, how has that worked in practice? It's worked exactly as I'm suggesting, that politicians in places like Canada or the Pacific Northwest say, well, wait a second. I mean, it's said to politicians, and then politicians behave the same way Pritzker did, or will, which is to expand it. Wait a second, you said choice. And you can contemplate every debilitating illness, physical or mental. And this is about my personal choice, my body, my choice. And so how dare you preclude me from the choices that other people have? And you know what politicians have said? Politicians of the Pritzker ilk? You're right. And so now we get people who are enlisting the state, and maybe in some cases the state is sort of imploring, incentivizing, suggesting that because you can't get that procedure you need and you're in a particular pain, physical or mental, maybe it's time to go. And we're right here with MAID at your service. And this is where you have to think about the premise and apply it against those like Pritzker who are using it as a cover to advance the culture of death that has already, unfortunately, advanced quite a bit under this governor in Illinois. For more on this topic and others, please be joined again by Reverend Robert Sirico. He's the co-founder and president emeritus of the Acton Institute in Michigan, the think tank that has my favorite slogan of any think tank on the planet, connecting good intentions to sound economics. If only. If only. Reverend Sirico, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You really, Dan, hit it right on the head. Every single point as I was listening to the governor, you responded. There might be one or two other things I'd add to it, but thank you for doing that. You pulled the rug out from under the pretense of rationality in this case.
Well, please add to it if you've got one or two more points. Yes.
Well, I mean, just on a philosophical level, this isn't a. He hangs it around the neck of religious leaders as though we want to be theocrats. John Stuart Mill, who was no great believer in God, pointed out that you cannot allow people to become slaves of their own will because their will and their ability to choose is ended by virtue of their slavery. Right? That's what Mill said in On Liberty. The moment a person dies, they have no more choice. They can't back out of it. And this is what euthanasia is. So it's really a secular thing. The other point that I would make is that, and this is one made by Tom Holland in his book Pax, which is the fall of the Roman Empire and the way Christianity replaced the Roman morality. The Roman morality said you could treat people in their vulnerability and disregard them, whether children who weren't wanted or old people who weren't useful. And this is the kind of pagan, visceral morality that the governor is proposing, rather than a compassion. I remember I had a debate with in the papers with Dr. Kevorkian of unhappy memory. And he said, well, I wouldn't treat my mother that way if she were dying. No, he said, I wouldn't treat my dog that way if it were dying. Why would I treat my mother that way? And my response was, because your mother's not a dog. This is the question of anthropology. This is the question of who is the human person and how ought they to be treated. And then, of course, your final point, which I just underscore, is in Holland, they said the same exact thing that the governor said. We just want to go this far, no further. And yet, not very long ago, they euthanized a nun because she was in the last stages of her life. They took her out of her misery. That's the way, that's the way you talk about your dog, not a human being.
Well, and I don't know if you read this piece by Louise Perry, but what you were just in First Things, but what you were just describing is this expansive think piece that she offered on paganism versus Christianity and the repaganizing that's going on, and I mentioned this yesterday, but I'll repeat it for the purpose of distributing it. She talks about, among other things, she talks about abortion, but she also talks about the Canadian program, medical assistance in dying, same as in Illinois. And she notes, disturbing reports out of Canada suggest that the poor and the disabled are already under pressure to make use of this quote-unquote service, and depressed teenagers are eager to see it extended to so-called mature minors, as some euthanasia lobbyists actually have proposed. I mean, I thought we were in the business of preventing youth suicide and suicide generally, and now we're going to indulge people who are despondent rather than counsel them in a productive direction.
Well, that's exactly it. There's a great economic incentive to rid ourselves of people who are not productive. And if that's the kind of culture we want to live in, well then, fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Something else I wanted to get your reaction to, particularly because I know you're anxious to comment on the Star Chamber proceeding that Apple Daily publisher and Chinese communist dissident Jimmy Lai was subjected to, who's basically a prisoner of that communist regime. But this was Newt Gingrich responding to the Bondi Beach terrorist attack, as well as the foiled New Year's Eve bombing plot in California and the foiled German market terrorist attack. And on and on and on. And on and on and on. This is what he had to say about what needs to happen in the West?
We have no strategy for going after people who have been radicalized. That's the key in Gaza. That's the key in Syria. That's the key in the United States. We have to have a totally new approach, and that requires rethinking parts of the First Amendment and asking yourself, if somebody is preaching death, do they really have a right to do that? And we know people who are being trained. We also underestimate the power of social media and the degree to which people are being recruited psychologically on the internet. These are going to be tough conversations, but every week we're going to be reminded somewhere on the planet if somebody is killed. And this is not going away. This requires defeating them, not ignoring them.
Do you have concern about an overreach in terms of repression here?
I absolutely do. I don't think we give up the First Amendment because that, there's a real difference. This is the argument of the left for many years, that words are violence. To be in favor of something that is wrong is not to do the wrong thing, and it will create chaos in our media, in our society. The answer to this kind of jihadist brainwashing is converting people. The reason this is mounting is because the West no longer has confidence in its own values, and conceding the First Amendment to them by saying, well, we can equivocate, we can, I think this is a real mistake. I know Mr. Gingrich. I have great respect for many of the contributions that he's made, but I think he's dead wrong on this.
And where should, speaking of having confidence in the West, the Wall Street Journal editorial page has mentioned Jimmy Lai off and on again over the years that he has been wrongly imprisoned. But is this an opportunity to exhibit that sort of confidence and really put pressure on the Chinese communist regime in Beijing here?
Yes, I think we need to do it not so much for the communist regime or even for Jimmy Lai, who is a personal friend, I should, state. It's that we need to do it for ourselves. We need to say what needs to be said about the communist regime holding people, and it's not just Jimmy Lai. There's about 400 other people in prison waiting for their sentencing and their convictions. So I think it's imperative that people, leaders, speak out, not just politicians, but moral leaders of every kind. I'm not sure it will have any effect on the mentality of the communists because freedom is a threat. A man like Jimmy Lai, a man of integrity, a man of success, a man of faith, is a deadly threat to the totalitarian regime there, as such people have been throughout history.
And to say nothing, when we've talked about this before, I compare him to Solzhenitsyn. To say nothing is it would be to sit silently by while Solzhenitsyn wasted away in a gulag.
Yes, why are we not speaking out like we did about Mandela and Solzhenitsyn? Sharansky wrote Jimmy Lai a beautiful letter encouraging him, saying that he understood the circumstance he was in and to take heart, that the world will not forget the contribution that he has made to the call for liberty.
Reverend Robert Sirico, co-founder and president emeritus of the Acton Institute. Reverend Sirico, thank you as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. God bless you.
You too. And he joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.
The Answer.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we